Welcome to Scary Stories, Episode 14, 1. A Serious Encounter by Vogel Frey on True Scary Stories from Reddit. The year was 2011, and I just moved out of my mom's house, and I was living at my best friend's house from high school. After a few months of living there, she had a bad habit of going into my room and jumping on my bed, and pulling my blankets off to wake me up. Well, one morning I was woken up to something jumping on my bed, and I was so tired that I was just trying to extend my legs out to kick her off my bed. But my ankle had an enormous amount of pressure on it. I couldn't move them. I felt chills go through my body, and the jumping continued, but nothing was there. And finally the pressure was released, and I fell out of my bed, and I ran out of the apartment in my underwear. It was 7 a.m., and I finally got the nerve to go back inside. I walked into my room, and there was a nervous feeling. I looked at my bed and saw 2 indents on the blanket, closely together. That's the crazy part about this. When I fell out of bed, I don't think the blanket moved. As if whatever was jumping on the bed was still standing there, holding the blanket in place. That's the only way I could explain to myself how I saw the marks still there. After that day, I spent the rest of the time sleeping in the living room, and I wouldn't go to bed until after the sun came up, and had the lights on no matter what. That went on for about 2 months. Fast forward a few months from that. Had some problems happen with my friend and moved back home to my old childhood room. My safe haven. That would soon change. When I moved back, I brought the same bed that I had in my prior encounter with the one night, and I slept facing the side of the room. I woke up to a noise, very distinctive noise, the sound of something dragging its feet on the carpet. It was pacing back and forth next to me, and suddenly, right in my face, growling, heavy breath. Then to the left of my face it began to pace again and again, once again coming back to my face and repeating, for one last time. In my face I hear it pace move away from me, and it stopped. I didn't open my eyes during this. A few weeks later, my mom gave me a blessed sacred heart charm. She told me to wear it and never take it off, and she hugged me and said she loved me. Months later, while her and I were smoking outside, drinking, she asked me if anything happened since then, and I told her no. She told me that night before she gave me that charm, I had scared her. From her account, I came into their room about 3 or 4 in the morning, and I pushed the door open and just stood there in their doorway. She woke up and asked me if I needed anything. She woke up and asked me if I was okay or if I needed anything. I was mute. I was just standing there for a minute or so. She said, then I walked back to my room. I still, to this day, don't know what that was about, or any of these encounters. For some context, the previous owner died in my mom's room. Also, my nephew would talk to someone. He was 6 at the time. I would babysit him while I was there, and downstairs getting his snack, walking back upstairs, and I could hear him having a full conversation with someone. I stopped short before getting to the room, and I could hear more clearly, but the floorboards made a noise, and he stopped, and immediately stopped talking. My sister would always say that he would wave bye to someone when he would leave this room. Some nights, when it was just me and him downstairs, I would hear walking upstairs in the rooms. 2. Eye of the Storm by Hovercraft Hot 670 on Scary Stories on Reddit. The day itself was long and boring. Not much really was going on. The evening at 3:30 p.m., it began to storm, and I sat in my bedroom for most of the afternoon watching YouTube and playing video games. Then I started to get tired and decided it was a great time to take a nap. I woke up around 5:25 to a tornado siren going off in the distance. It was now storming more violently, now the hail hitting my window and the side of my house, and then I could spot a cloud that looked as though they were forming into a tornado. Opened my blinds and looked for a second and saw nothing. About 6 o'clock, the tornado siren was going off again, and I was eating dinner. I could hear cars going down the street, and perhaps those people were rushing home because of the tornado siren. The siren was going off every few minutes, and I was unable to check the weather report as the power went off about 15 minutes ago. I then checked out my window, as I had been doing regularly, and saw the clouds that were dark and low. The tornado siren had gone off once again, and this time the tornado on the ground. I saw it form. It was just a while away, During tornadoes, you want to get as low to the ground as possible, such as a basement. The only problem is I didn't have a basement. No basement, and I was too afraid to go outside, so I got under my table. It seemed to me that it was only logical. Suddenly, the siren went out, and it seemed like it had been gone off for a while. That time, it was about 7, and outside it was dark, and the sun hadn't gone down. Suddenly, a loud noise like a train passing by began. It kept getting closer and closer, and then suddenly, the right wall of the living room was ripped off and lifted away. The rest soon followed. I wanted to get up and run, but I knew if I did, my chances of death would soon become an absolute certainty. The table I was under was pulled up, and I was blown to the side, facing up. For a split second, I saw something. I can't describe it. A horrendous appearance, but it looked like an eye. Well, perhaps an eye made out of multiple eyes. Hundreds of them, millions, trillions even. From what I could see, it looked directly at me, and I looked directly at it. Every night since, I've had this dream of the moment, but in these dreams, it talks to me. It tells me to do things. 3. This story is a trigger warning for child abuse. Please do not listen to it if you do not want to hear this. Serial Killer's Notebook by zombiefox 404 from Scary Stories on Reddit. So I, male 48, recently went to go help my mother clean out a house. It took weeks. She is a hoarder, and just so you understand what I mean, she has about 6 different drawers full of unused soap bars, and when I asked why she had so many, her only answer was just in case I needed them. I'm her only remaining family, as I was an only child, and my father, her husband, passed away from cancer at a young age, and all of her siblings, so relatives are either dead or not in our country. So I officially made it my choice a few months ago to put her in a nursing home. Anyways, the final room I had to clean out was the attic, and when I tell you that there were piles of boxes just filled with books, it took me around 5 hours to sort through, and about 95% of those books just went into the bag for donation. So when I got to the final box, it felt like a miracle from God, to say the least. I was honestly prepared to just throw the whole box into the donation bag, but I'm glad I didn't. I just regret it a ton most days. I found an old tattered notebook. I felt like if I touched it, it was going to disintegrate. I cleaned off all the dust and assumed I had found one of those memory book picture things. But instead I found a journal. It was handwritten. It was messy and absolutely did not belong to either my mom or my dad. I just assumed my mom picked it up at one of those church sales she loves going to. But after reading a couple pages, I wasn't so sure. This book has haunted my nightmares. Anytime I close my eyes, I just visualize the things that I've read within this notebook. And despite my utter fear of it, it would be dumb to make this post and not recant some of the pages here. June 26, 1978. I don't understand why it's so morally wrong to kill someone. People just don't understand the thrill of it. It's the same as taking drugs. The first dose, it's the best thing imaginable. And then the second or third, or any time after, it can't live up to the first hit. So many people like to say, don't knock it till you try it. So why are people so immediately one to shame murderers? I have a theory that if someone tries it once, that they'll understand the righteousness of it. Having someone under your control, under your hands, watching as their face contort, to shock, to fear, to anger, to desperation, and then finally to despair. Seeing the life drained from their eyes, letting you be the last face that they see as you crush their windpipe. The small gurgle that reaches up from the back of their throats as they attempt their final breath. It's almost orgasmic. July 3rd, 1978. I still remember my first kill like it was yesterday. It was an accident, sure, but it was still just incredible, as if I'd intended to do it. I was 10, and my mom had called me over to watch the baby as she went to go pee. I knew I didn't have a choice. Being asked to do something is never a choice. You already expected to do it. So I agreed and sat on the stool she was on originally, and watched as the babbling ball of flesh squished in the water. That thing hated me. Any time it looked at me, it would cry, as if it knew what I was. This time was no different. The second it noticed its sweet mommy was gone, it screamed at the top of its lungs, wailing like a banshee. I swear, it's like it wanted to destroy my eardrums. So I decided to make it stop. I grabbed its little malleable head and shoved it under the water. I had always been told staying underwater for too long was a bad thing, but it was never taught why. Its screams turned into bubbles, and it was quiet until the bubbles stopped, and then a new scream replaced it, one of my mother. I removed my hands as she screamed at me and asked what I had done. I watched as she took the rag doll out of the bathtub and tried to get some life back into it. I immediately brought out the crocodile tears, explaining between sobs that it was an accident, that he actually put his head under the water and I was bringing him back up. But God, that feeling, I had watched his body go limp, and it was one that I never forgot. That's just 2 passages of the notebook. I'll spare you the rest, as there were some more. Thank you all so much for watching today's video, and a huge thank you to everyone who shared their amazing stories for me to read. Your support and encouragement mean the world to me. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more of my content, and don't forget, don't shoot the messenger.